Hey everybody, this is Tiffany Spalding from Life in the Wick, and I'm here today to talk to you. Well, we're starting a new series of podcasts today, actually, and the topic of this series is a book by a man named Jordan Peterson called The 12 Rules for Life. And I read this book, I loved it, I thought it was so applicable to life, but I had friends read it and they were like, oh my gosh, it's too much. So well, Jordan Peterson is brilliant. He brings in psychology and culture and religion and everything into these 12 rules. And sometimes it's just too much. And so I thought this would be a great thing to talk about and to get different people. This is my son, London, who's joining me for the very first podcast.
Well, you say that, but I've been on Tuesday Live many times before.
Yes. London has spent a lot of his whole life actually doing things with me that are in this kind of thing. But so I was excited that he was willing to come up and do this very first rule. And so our goal is in this series is to talk about the rules and really in a way that it will how to apply them in your life, right? So not only what the rule means.
Right. But also just the perspective of both, right? Both generations of us being able to apply the same rule, but in different aspects of our lives or in different ways. And beyond that, just trying to, there's a lot of meaning built into the book. So each person is going to walk away with something slightly different. So to explore that a little bit and to make sure that we get the most out of it is kind of our goal.
Right. And so that you can look at it, you know, one of the things that happens regardless of what kind of book you read, whether it's a business book or self-help book or whatever, sometimes figuring out how do I actually apply that in my own life. And so different generations of what's happening in my life is very different than what's happening in London's life. My mom's going to join me for one of these as well. And that will kind of give a perspective, which hopefully you'll be able to apply to your life, right? And maybe you'll make a comment, which would be amazing, and tell us how this rule applies or what you're going to attempt to do to apply this rule. And as we work through all 12 of the rules, how they're going to work in your life.
Or if you think we're completely wrong, if our interpretation is exactly the opposite of what you think, let us know.
Yeah, please.
We're just looking for the truth.
Please, yeah. Yes. Okay. So a couple of important notes in the book. So this is the book, Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life. The foreword was written by a man named Norman Doidge, and he kind of boiled down to really important things about the book in general. And the first one is, I'm just going to read it. The best rules do not ultimately restrict us, but instead facilitate our goals and make for fuller, freer lives. And sometimes we think about rules and we're like, we don't want rules, but actually rules kind of give you a guideline and kind of keep everybody on track.
The right rules. Rules well applied, I would say.
Yes. Okay.
But it is, I do want to talk about that for a minute because it is really true, right? I mean, think about the rules, especially the rules that you set for yourself, right? If you are good about going to the gym or being fit, you probably have certain rules about, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. I'm going to not eat X amount of sugar. I'm going to this, that, or the other thing, right? And those rules you apply for yourself are rules just the same as laws are rules, right? Sometimes we don't always agree with the laws, but we have to recognize they function for a larger society. But the rules you set for yourself ultimately do lead you to perform for your life. And if you find that you're breaking a rule you have often, right, there is a recognition of that. It's not just, you know, oh, I made this up for myself. It's not that big of a deal, right? It's felt when you break a rule of your own.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Like you're not going to be able to reach your goal or get where you want to go. And then that realization of, well, hopefully that's the realization, like that when you step back and you look at what's happening. Okay. So the other thing really is kind of what this whole book boils down to is set your own house in order first. So before you go out and try and conquer the world or do something amazing, make sure that you have your life in order, that you are following all those rules that you need to, so that so often we hear people out talking about how things should be done or what things should be done. And when you look at their lives, they're not actually doing any of those things. So putting your life in order first and then going out into the world to kind of a premise of the entire book. Okay, so we're going to start with rule number 1, which is stand up straight with your shoulders back, right? Rule number 1. This is both physical and metaphorical. And it's interesting, before I hand this over to London, it's interesting because there are a lot of other science. So in the book, when you read the book, he talks a lot about lobsters and how they fight and this whole posturing. But when you go through the world, you see these patterns over and over again, which is one of the things that makes the book so valuable, is that it looks at those things. So physically, we all know what that means, right? If you stand up straight and you present yourself well, it's easy. Right. How people perceive you changes instantly. So physical is easy. And then the metaphorical is that same thing. Are you being strong, consistent, forthright in your behavior, in your thoughts, intellectually? Do you think that's part of what that means? Or...
I mean, I think it's a little bit of everything. So the first thing I actually want to say is I thought it was really interesting that rule number 1 is stand up straight with your shoulders back. But you'll notice that it's never about posture. The word posture isn't even mentioned one time, I think, in the whole of the chapter. And I thought that was really interesting because it's not about how you're posturing. It's about standing up straight with your shoulders back and believing it, right? When you strike a posture, you're doing something in order to benefit the situation. And this is more about a general sense of standing up straight with your shoulders back. And that doesn't mean, I think some people might think that, well, again, it goes back to the lobster thing, right? He talks about how a weak lobster will often get picked on because it's crunched over. It looks like an easy target, right? And I think some people take this whole shoulders back, kind of chest out, right, as a more aggressive stance. But it's not really aggressive. It's more of just like, yes, I am here, and I am not trying to take up any more space than I need to, but I'm also not shrinking into the background, right?
Right.
It's making yourself present. And that comes physically and mentally, right? Like sometimes harsh truths are harsh, but it doesn't make them any less truthful, right? And I think that's kind of one of the things here is you have to understand what you will be able to stand up for, what you're willing to stand up for, to strike that posture for, and stand there and take the brunt of whatever somebody's going to throw at you because you believe in it, versus not, which is sort of, I guess, picking your own battles. But
right. Well, and he talks a little bit about bullying as well, and hierarchy, social hierarchies, and that if you do that, if you stand up tall with your shoulders back physically in that space, that you are perceived as someone who has strength, and you're less likely to get bullied, and you're less likely, there's some information, there's some details in the book about, kids who cry more often get picked on more often because they're easy targets, versus being able to present yourself as,
right, I'm
here, I'm present, I'm engaged, and I don't know, it's an interesting that actually that physical goes into the mental. There's a book, I don't remember the title of it, but one of the things they talk about in the book is like getting big before you go in and talk to somebody, before you ask for a raise, before you go on stage, anytime that you need to. And there is, if you're listening or watching and you try it, just making yourself big like this, feeling that stretch, you feel this little pump of serotonin or endorphins or whatever it is, and you feel better and stronger, and it even makes you feel a little bit more energized and happy.
Yeah, and in the book, he directly relates it to serotonin. That's the whole, the example with lobsters focuses on two chemicals. One serotonin, and the other is some other chemical. But one of them is essentially a builder. Builds you up. It makes you feel bigger, stronger. And the other is the exact opposite. It makes you feel weaker, slower.
Octopamine, I think. Yeah.
Octopamine, I think. Yes, you're right.
Octopamine.
And so it's true. And one of the other things that got me thinking about is something that I think a lot of people don't realize is that you don't become confident and then make confident actions. You take actions to make yourself confident, and the confidence follows later. And that is something that is really mentally difficult to get over. And when I was younger, something that I went through when I was in high school, where I had to come to this realization of well, I'm not going to, it's not just enough to be confident. You have to act in a way that is confident, and then the confidence itself will follow. And then you will be able to confidently approach these situations that you have never been in before, right?
Right.
Because experience is the best teacher. And so when you approach a situation and you're not sure how it's going to go, that is the ultimate test kind of whether you're standing up straight with your shoulders back, right? Because that is a test of whether or not do you believe in yourself, or is it simply because you're showing up to situations you've been in before that you're able to do that.
Right. So that kind of goes into what he was talking about feedback loops, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that he gave examples of feedback loops that end in negative things are things like alcoholism, right? You drink a little bit, you drink a little bit more.
And hang on, we should clarify here because there's a big misconception with feedback loops. Positive feedback loops are a feedback loop where something happens and then that effect is amplified over and over again. A positive feedback loop can be negative. So take alcoholism. If somebody in your family dies and you turn to alcohol and then you get a hangover and you drink the next morning to stave off the hangover and continue to do that, even though that's bad for you, it's a positive feedback loop.
With a negative result.
With a negative result, exactly. And so like that is something I think that it's sometimes hard to keep straight in conversations. Just want to make a clarification there.
And it is difficult to, like when I was reading the book and going through that, I'm like, so if you're in a positive feedback loop, it has a negative result, or you can be in a positive feedback loop that has a positive result, which to London's point about doing things, taking those risks, right? Standing up, being present, building your confidence by taking risks and things that you might not know, in kind of in that same way. So you're in a positive feedback loop that is also giving you a positive result as it amplifies. Saving money is the same thing, right? If you don't save any money, the less money you save, the worse you feel about your financial situation. But if you save a little bit of money and then you save a little bit more, then you feel a little bit better. That positive feedback loop is going to net out.
And that's a good one because you can watch that positive feedback loop work, right? Especially if you have a bank account with interest, right? Because the more you build your savings, the more interest you get. And all of a sudden, now when you have $10,000 in your bank account, that 1% interest is starting to generate $100 a year, which is no small change.
Just something. And you see it grow, and then you're like, well, could I save another $10 every month? Could I do? And then, so that positive feedback loop is giving you a positive result, but it's the same thing, right? You're taking that on, which is maybe stand up with your shoulders back, is I'm ready to take this on. I'm ready to take control.
And even before that, sometimes standing up with your shoulders back is simply embracing the fact that you're bad at something, right?
Right. Yeah,
sometimes
absolutely.
the hardest thing to do is just to look at yourself and go, yeah, I'm terrible at this, and I need to get better at it, and then commit yourself to doing it. But it can be hard to admit to yourself that, because there are very few people who enjoy regular change, right? Everybody likes a little bit of stability in their life. So if you have to look at yourself and change a fundamental aspect about yourself to improve your life, it can be difficult to even admit that.
Yes.
Right? So sometimes that's standing up with your shoulders back in the face of the you that wouldn't stand up with their shoulders back.
Well, and even in that is the metaphorical side. In the same physical side, standing up with your shoulders back and offering that apology, right? Like instead of, coming across very sincere as like, here I am, I'm present, I'm apologizing for whatever I did wrong or whatever mistake I made, which also then I think adds to the confidence building, right? Like, okay, that was hard. Like we all think that's going to be hard. Like we avoid apology and we avoid taking responsibility because we think it's going to be hard and it's going to be miserable. And then when you actually do it, when you get through the other side, it's always way easier.
And I think that's the truth with most things too, right? 90% of the things I think I'm apprehensive about turn out to be not as bad as when I thought they were going to be. And you know what's interesting about it too is I've noticed it more often when I go to work. I enjoy going to work and being at work. I enjoy what I do. But if I have 2 or 3 days off, sometimes I dread going back. And then I show up to work and it's never that bad because again, I like what I do, and I find what I do to be somewhat easy. And so when I go to work, I walk home with, however much money in my pocket, and I'm like, I don't really know what I was really dreading. That wasn't really that bad.
It is funny.
But it is like, I just wanted to make a point there, too, that it can be even 2 or 3 days away from something that you do all the time can do that. And so I think the mental component of standing up straight with your shoulders back, right, is looking at yourself and being like, okay, like I know I didn't do this for the last 2 days for whatever reason, whether I was supposed to or not, but I am going to do it today, right? Like I am going to actually make this happen, and I'm not going to let this irrational, unfounded dread get in my way, because that's what it always ends up turning out to be. It's like this mental monster that you have built that turns out to be nothing more than shadow.
Right. And then you walk through it and you're like, wow, look at the sunshine.
Yeah,
Here
exactly.
I am. But here's an interesting thing. Even being at work, no matter what you do, that standing up straight with your shoulders back, your coworkers, your customers, whoever it is that's coming into contact with you is going to assign you a level up in hierarchy, right? You're presenting yourself. So I guess that's one thing we haven't really even talked about is social hierarchy and how this relates to how you're presenting yourself, how your results relates to social hierarchy.
And it comes down, I think, and this is one of the big points in the first chapter, because it comes down to heuristics, right? People look at you and they make an instant judgment whether they want to or not. Not about who you are or what you do, but about the way they're going to treat you, right? And if you look like somebody who at least deserves the chance to be given respect, you will be given that chance. Versus if you look like somebody who can easily be pushed around, you might not necessarily get pushed around, but the option has been opened, right? And one of the things that's talked about, I believe, in the chapter is narrowing down those interactions that you could have with another human being by simply having the right posture to show another human being what it is and it is not that you will tolerate, right? When you approach somebody with a certain amount of confidence, whatever interaction you're going to engage with, right, there is less of a chance that they are going to try and push you over if they don't think that you can be pushed over, right? And that happens even before you've said one word, even before you're within 10 feet of each other, right? It is one glance, one look, that it's all it takes.
And it's nature. It's something that is so deep in our brains, you can't not pass judgment on another human being because it is part of the fight or flight dynamic. Because for all of humankind, you've had to look at a situation and make a decision. Am I safe? Is this person safe? And then act on it instantly. And so it is important. And if you're presenting like, okay, I'm safe, I'm here, I'm present, you're going to get a lot more respect and a lot more opportunity. And then once you, like what you were saying, once you have that little bit of confidence, once you have that little bit of opportunity, it's the same thing. It's that snowball of opportunity, that snowball of confidence, because it's all the same thing, right? You're building on one little thing, the next little thing, the next little thing. One of the things that I thought was interesting and appropriate here was a quote from Mark Twain. So in the book, he says, no one standing still can triumph, no matter how well constituted. So you can present yourself and get that little bit of a leg up, right? But you have to actually move forward, like you were saying about doing something and building confidence. Mark Twain said, even if you're on the right track, you'll still get run over if you just stand there, right? So it's the same idea. Like you can get in the door, but then you got to go keep moving through it, right? So it's only the first step.
That's why I like, it's not, he doesn't discuss it directly in the book, but one of the things that Jordan Peterson has talked about that I think is a really good example is the mail, right? The mail's so easy. You could so easily go out to your mailbox, check your mail every day. It is at like if you have a community mailbox, it might be a little bit farther, but it's going to, cost you a maximum of a quarter mile of walking, right? And so if you didn't get the mail yesterday, all you have to do is to get the mail today, and then to get the mail tomorrow, and to get the mail for the rest of the week. And then once you've done that, you can say, all right, I'm comfortable getting the mail. Let's solve the dishes problem next, right? And all of these things that are within your own house, right, the whole setting your house in order thing, is both, again, a mental and a physical thing, but it's at an individual level, right? Because if you can check the mail every day and get the dishes done and get your laundry done and keep a clean house, all of a sudden everything else you have to do in the rest of your life will become so much easier, because it's like, well, if it's just that easy to do that, it's just that easy to do this.
Just do the next thing.
Right.
I'm going to do the next thing and keep going. And the thing is, when you do one thing, you're like, yeah, I did that. Like you automatically get this, right? I did that. It doesn't matter how small the thing is. I took the garbage out, right? Whatever it is. And it just keeps pushing you forward on every level. So in terms of this rule in particular, stand up straight with your, because that was kind of that same conversation about Price's law, or the Pareto distribution, right? The people who start to have, will have more, whatever that is. Money, confidence, spirituality, friends, whatever it is, that's what happens. You get more of whatever because you are exercising your ability to get a little bit, whatever it is that you want, right? When I say get more, I'm not talking about just financial things. I'm talking about all of those things. You do a little bit of work and a little bit more work and a little bit more work. And it all starts with this rule number 1, stand up straight with your shoulders back.
So one of the other things he talks about in that chapter too, because I went through and I made some of my own notes as we were going through this. And we should state, just for the record here, so you have read the full book in its entirety and all of Beyond Order, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. This is my first read-through of the book, and I am planning on reading through it chapter by chapter. So I have only read chapter 1, so I cannot pull from anything farther in the book. Okay, I have 2 more really quick short things. Right. One of them here is, he says, standing up straight with your shoulders back is not only physical because you're not only a body, which I thought was a great line.
Awesome.
Because you're not only a body, right? Because you can separate you from yourself, right, in terms of your body and your being, right, if that's the way you choose to define them. So standing up straight with your shoulders back as a body is one thing. Standing up straight with your shoulders back as you can be something entirely different. Sometimes they're not, but they can be.
They can be, yep. And
the last thing that I wanted to point out, so Jordan Peterson talks a lot about God and the Christian sense of God, and he is a very astute religious scholar. I am not a man of religious convictions. So when that stuff comes up, sometimes I have to search for other meaning. And so one of the things he says here is, it means willingly undertaking the sacrifices necessary to generate a productive and meaningful reality. It means acting to please God in the ancient language. So now
that's funny that you said that, because you have that underlined in your book, and I also have that same statement underlined in my book.
Well, because I think it's incredibly powerful, and what I think about it, what is interesting about when people talk about God, you're not always talking about the Christian religious God. So there's a concept of Spinoza's God, which is this idea that nature and the laws of nature in and of itself, the universe in and of itself is God, right? And that is, so the way that God speaks is through dictating the laws of nature, right? And if you think about it that way, it is still the same thing, right? Like, well, might not be somebody of religious convictions. I can understand how you would view nature as this all-present, all-powerful being, because that's what it is. And when you act in accordance with the body that has come about through nature, when you are more confident, when you present yourself better, which makes you happier, that is a bodily reaction to stimuli within your environment. You are acting in accordance with the way that your body was designed, right? Even from a purely evolutional, natural level, you are predisposed to be this way.
You are. That's a great point. Mm-hmm. And you feel better when you, like we're talking about the serotonin, right? When you do this, you feel better. It's like when you smile, you feel happier, right? So I think
he even says that in the book. He's like, if somebody tells you to move your face in a way that makes you smile, you will report feeling happier. Right. And if somebody asks you to move your face in a way that makes you frown, you will report not feeling as happy.
So it's really interesting. But one of the great things about this book, and we'll just wrap up with a couple of ideas of how to actually apply this in your life. Recap, I guess. One of the amazing things about the book is that Jordan Peterson does bring in religion, spirituality, environment, science, psychology, sociology, and all of those disciplines point to the exact same thing, the laws of nature. You can't, no matter how you look at this, it all points to the same thing for success. In this case, that rule number 1, stand up straight with your shoulders back. So, under then the obvious, the physically of doing it, what are some of the other ways you could apply this rule in your life? which we already talked about. And you want to get a recap on?
I mean,
your
I just
thoughts?
think there's a lot of ways that you can do it. It's as simple as doing one more thing today than you did yesterday, right?
Confidence.
But it can also be, so right now in this country, we are going through some serious legal questions as a society about what we want to decide with several different topics. But standing up straight with your shoulders back can simply mean deciding that, I've held these beliefs for a long time, but I've never truly examined them. And as scary as that might be, because I might end up in a totally different spot than I was before, I'm going to do my due diligence and actually look into this, right?
That is an awesome point. And I think so timely and relevant because that is what's happening. People glom on to what they believed. I remember when London was a kid, he said to me, "Mom, you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to." And this is that same sort of thing. You don't have to believe everything you think. In fact, you shouldn't believe everything you think, right?
That's true. Yeah, 100%, especially because sometimes you're presented with an argument and you accept it, and that becomes core and foundational to some of your beliefs. And then later down the road, you realize, well, maybe I didn't take enough time to explore that. And the problem then is years down the line, you have built a philosophy based on these arguments that predicated your original...
That are wrong.
Yeah, that are wrong. And in addition to that, right, it's not only you that affects. Because if you have held a belief for so long and your friends, your family, your loved ones know you to hold that belief, and then you say, I don't know about that anymore. Some people might rejoice because they didn't believe in your belief.
Right.
But some people, on the other hand, might say, I can't believe you believe this other thing now.
Right.
How could you possibly believe that? And that is another thing of standing up straight with your shoulders back, is sometimes you've developed this friend group or this, group of close people that you absolutely love, and that you end up on the other side of an argument with somebody, and it's being able to stand up there and say, like, look, I do not want this to affect our friendship or our relationship, but I'm also not going to lie to you about what I believe, right? And it's, again, planting your feet, putting your shoulders back, standing up tall and saying, like, again, like, I'm not trying to be aggressive towards you, but I'm not going to be allowed to I'm not going to allow myself to be pushed around.
Yeah. So it is in the physical sense, in the metaphorical sense, building that confidence, being who you are, moving yourself up in social hierarchy, all of those things that happen physically and mentally. And then I just want to remind you, there's a bunch of research out there about what the book that I read calls Getting Big, where sometimes you don't feel like I have that confidence. I can't go into that room and stand up straight with my shoulders back. And so slip off into the bathroom or somewhere where no one sees you and just stretch yourself out. I mean, like I said earlier, you can try it right now. You will feel better just making yourself big, and it will give you that confidence and boost to go out and do that. So I guess, do you have anything you want to add before I wrap up, Lundy?
The only thing that I want to add is from my own personal experience. The way the number one thing that helped me build up my confidence when I was a kid is when I decided that I was going to finally start going to the gym. And that, like, I know that sounds like a cliche thing, and that's something that everybody, says to do. But when you start going to the gym and then you see the results of the gym in the mirror every time when you get out of the shower, and then when people start to ask you, oh, have you been going to the gym? You look bigger. All of those things contribute to this pump up to the point where you are all of a sudden it just kind of disappears. It falls by the wayside. It's like, why wouldn't I confidently walk into this room? I've got nothing to hide, right?
So all those things, all those little steps
right.
that you take build up to you actually being able to exercise this, stand up straight with your shoulders back.
Right. And I think it's amazing too how whatever it is, regardless of what you do, if you do one thing today and then do one more thing tomorrow and one little thing the next day, and you keep to that trend and you just do that, you will see your confidence build. Like, it's weird how getting the mail can lead you to have enough confidence to asking the guy in the grocery store where something is, can lead you the confidence to asking the bank teller for a service you've never got, to doing this other thing, to doing this other thing, and then it leads to these opportunities that you just never would have thought
you're building.
You're building. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Okay, everybody. So I want to encourage you to read Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. It's a great book. It's loaded with information and all the details, all the supporting information you need to actually make those rules something that you should have in your life, or I believe that you should have in your life. So,
and remember, you're trying to make rules not to restrict yourself. You're trying to make rules to make yourself a freer person at the end of the day. And that comes from knowing that you are going to follow those rules whether or not
discipline,
you think about them.
Structure, right. It's built into who you are. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us. London, thanks for coming up
Anytime.
to podcast with me. London lives about, 85 miles from here.
Yeah,
so,
not even that, I think.
Yeah. So he may be up here for another rule or some other podcasting. Anyway.
Or at least as tech support.
At least, absolutely tech support. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching or listening. Looking forward to our second Rule for Life coming out just a week from today. Take care, everybody.